Good evening, and thank you for joining me for another Boring Books for Bedtime. I hope tonight's selection provides all the boredom your busy brain needs to quiet down and let you get some sleep. Before we begin, I'd like to give a special shout out of thanks to some new members of our Patreon family. Maggie, Trash Bags 2, Sanjay, Juliet, Tracy, Sarah, Gretchen, Taters, Kirsten, Jennifer, and Rose. Thank you all so much for supporting this podcast. By becoming members of Patreon, you help us remain 100% listener-supported and ad-free for everyone, and it's very much appreciated. If you're interested in supporting Boring Books for Bedtime and finding out more about the perks available to subscribers, including exclusive episodes, full books, and collections found nowhere else, you'll find a link to Patreon in the show description. You'll also find a link to buymeacoffee.com, where you can support us with a one-time tip. No subscription required. I hope you'll take a moment to check them out. Now, let's read and relax. Find a comfortable spot. Adjust your volume. Take a nice deep breath in. Let it out slowly. And off we go. Tonight, let's relax with information about some of mankind's closest companions. We're reading All About Dogs, a book for doggy people by Charles Henry Lane, breeder, exhibitor, judge. With 87 illustrations of the most celebrated champions of our time, drawn from life, by R.H. Moore. First published in 1901 by John Lane, London and New York. Let's begin. Preface. I am told it is indispensable there should be a preface to this little work, but I am quite at a loss what to put in it. What I had to say on the subject upon which it treats, I have said in the book, and I am not aware of anything I wish to add or withdraw. I can only hope the perusal of the book may afford as much pleasure to my readers as the writing it has given me, in recalling pleasant memories of many friends, both two- and four-footed, some of whom have long since joined the majority. As recording the impressions of one who has had considerable practical experience with many varieties of the canine race, and been brought into constant contact with the best specimens, I think my book is somewhat out of the usual run of doggy books. While in no wise seeking to produce a scientific treatise, nor yet a natural history, in the ordinary acceptation of the term, my wish has been so to write on the subject as to stir up in the minds of any of my readers, unacquainted with the many charms possessed by dogs, a desire to adopt some kind of dog as a companion and friend, and to confirm the affection and regard of my multitudinous dog-loving friends, so that they may be disposed to extend the borders of their fancy, and possibly be interested and amused by some of the humors and vagaries of the show rings or the doggy anecdotes. These, when they are not within my personal knowledge, I have endeavored to verify, so as to avoid the fairy tales we sometimes read under the title of doggy stories. before closing these remarks, I must express my deep gratitude to my friend Mr. R. H. Moore, who has given my book the inestimable advantage of his talented pencil in portraying so many excellent and truthful portraits of the lights of the canine world, including more than 60 champions of their respective varieties. I am not aware that such a number of canine celebrities has ever before been gathered together in one volume, and they represent some of the best pictures of dogs I have ever seen, even of Mr. Moore's, and I think most dog lovers will acknowledge that he is particularly happy in hitting off the expressions and catching the actual likeness of his subjects, most kindly taking up the matter for me when very much pressed with other commissions, not only giving me the benefit of his valuable advice in the selection of the most distinguished and typical specimens for the different varieties procurable, but entered into the work with the utmost ardor and zeal. I feel therefore more indebted to him than I can express for enabling me to present to the public such an interesting and, I hope, instructive picture gallery of dogs of the present day. With these few words, I commend my little book to the troublous waters of public favor. Introduction. I suppose if we take the whole of the animal kingdom in any way associated with man, either as companion or helper, there is none to compare in popularity with the subject of these notes. But yet, I have often found in conversation, even with lovers of animals, very mistaken notions about dogs, their varieties, characteristics, and peculiarities. I think there are more known and acknowledged varieties of dog than of any other of the animals we are at all familiar with, and the ways, sizes, appearance, and characteristics differ so greatly that it is hardly possible, one would imagine, to find any person to whom some kind of a dog would not appeal. I wish, if possible, to say something to stir up in the minds of some, not hitherto keeping a dog, the desire to do so, and whether merely as a guard or companion, or with a view to trying to breed some good specimens, and occasionally to send to some of the exhibitions of dogs which have so increased in number and quality during the last 20 years, that I have frequently heard it stated that taking out Saturdays and Sundays, there is a dog show being held somewhere or other on every ordinary day in the year. I would strongly advise the obtaining a well-bred dog of whatever variety is selected, as not only is it more satisfactory to have about you the best procurable type of any breed you may fancy, whether dogs or anything else, but if you want to part with either the originals or any of their progeny, it is usually much easier to find purchasers and at much better prices for what is called pedigree stock, that is, of which the parentage for one or more generations is known, than when no particulars or references can be given. There are fashions in dogs, the same as in other things, and I can remember a great many crazes for different breeds of dog. Fox terriers, which are smart, lively, game little fellows, well able to adapt themselves to almost any circumstances, have had a long term of favor, and are still largely kept, perhaps as largely as any breed of their size. Another element in their favor is their not having much coat, and so not bringing in much mud upon them, even in dirty weather, if kept in the house. This, of course, has been rather against Skye terriers, which are otherwise capital dogs for the house, full of life and spirit, but to be kept in any order, they must be occasionally brushed, or their coats, which should be hard and straight, somewhat of the texture and straightness of a horse's tail, will get matted and be a disfigurement instead of an ornament. A great movement has existed for some time in favor of the Irish Terrier, who should be almost unbroken in reddish-brown color. I mean with little or no shading, what is called self-color. This is a good all-round breed, able to follow a horse, a trap, be a good guard or companion, take care of himself in his walks abroad, or have a turn at anything which comes in his way in the vermin line. As to a suitable dog to take up as household guard or companion, these are the Scottish Terrier, often called the die-hard or Aberdeen Terrier, a rather cobby, short-legged breed with a pointed head, ears standing straight up, short back, and gaily carried tail, color generally nearly black, grizzled or brindled. I believe I brought in 1868 the first of the breed ever seen in England. At any rate, I had not seen one before, from a place called Uig in the island of Skye, and quite a character he was, and I could give many instances of his great sagacity and very quaint ways during the many years he lived with me. I regret to say he has long gone to the happy hunting grounds. I shall say something more of him amongst the anecdotes of dogs further on. The other breed I refer to is the Dandy Dinmont Terrier, immortalized by Sir Walter Scott. For intelligence, pluck, faithfulness, and general adaptability to the ways and wishes of his owner, I do not know any breed to surpass it. In many cases, I have known a strain of dandies kept up for generations in families, and the affection between the dogs and their owners is so great that no money would bring about a parting, and I have often seen pedigrees and genealogical trees of well-known strains of dandies, taking them back a dozen generations, and prized very highly by their owners or breeders. Whatever the decision come to by an intending keeper of a dog, if it is to be an inmate of the house, and is one of the smaller breeds, a box or basket should be provided in some place free from draughts, and after sprinkling either a little sawdust impregnated with disinfectant, or the disinfectant itself, put in some straw for a bed. This is better and less likely to harbor insect life than hay or any kind of rug or mat. But if the dog is to be kept out of doors, obtain one of the improved kennels with the entrance at the side, which affords a shelter from the wind, rain, and snow, and have a chain constructed with 2 or preferably 3 swivels in it, that it cannot become twisted up. Many a dog has been injured and even killed by neglect of these little matters. Of course, if convenience can be found, it is much better not to tie up a dog at all. No dog of mine, and I have had hundreds during the last 25 years of almost every known breed, ever catches sight of a collar or chain, except at a show. And contrary to the popular idea which I have often heard expressed by sympathizers with the dogs on the show benches, dogs accustomed to exhibition work delight in it, and the sight of a dog's traveling box or basket, or the rattle of a chain with the show label on it, is sufficient to cause the wildest excitement amongst my dogs at any time, each dog hoping it may be his good fortune to go to the show, which they look upon as great entertainment. I will undertake to say that if a dozen boxes or baskets are placed in the yard with the lids open, and as many dogs let out of their kennels, you shall find an occupant in every box within 5 minutes, and that each shall choose the box he usually travels in. It is far better to enclose your dog or dogs in one of the many forms of loose boxes or kennels now procurable of so many firms who cater for dogs' requirements, something in the way of a kennel or sleeping box with railed-in run attached. One of the neatest and best at anything like the price that I have seen, 90 shillings if my memory serves me, is made by Mr. William Calway, Sharpness, Gloucestershire, who has made quite a leading article in his trade of this kind of work. Another matter to be attended to is to give the dog plenty of exercise, unless the weather positively prevents it. Many people seem to fancy if a dog is taken into the air in a carriage or other conveyance, that this is sufficient, but it is not so, and the generality of dogs are all the better for at least 2 hours walking exercise every day, during which time they will nearly or quite double the distance traversed by their master or mistress, and perhaps get a drink, pick up some grass, or otherwise amuse themselves. As regards water, dogs do not drink so much as many people suppose, and it is better to keep a supply, of course frequently changed, in the yard outside the kennel or sleeping box. Dogs, as a rule, like a drink when going out or returning from exercise, more than they do in their own quarters, and if it be kept there, particularly when 2 or more inmates are together, it is almost sure to be upset and make the place look bad, besides being uncomfortable. A very important matter is the feeding of the dogs. In these days, when so many firms are producing biscuits on purpose to cater for the wants of the vast doggy community, there is no difficulty in getting some of them. But I have found in a long experience with dogs that although almost all breeds will eat dog biscuits, some even take them when given whole and chop them up like bones, even dry. It is better in most cases to break them up about the size of walnuts and soak them the day previously to use in hot water or broth or even cold water. If boiled vegetables, potatoes, cabbage, or some such be mixed with them afterwards, it is not only more palatable, but better for the dogs than the biscuit alone. And occasionally, say once in a week or 10 days, a little flour of brimstone, in the proportion of about a teaspoonful for a fair-sized dog, should be mixed with the food. We know ourselves that whatever our food, the most tempting that money could buy, we should tire of it if always the same. And it is precisely the same with animals, so that the more it is varied the better, even if the change is slight. And all who have had much to do with dogs will know that some dogs, and even some breeds of dogs, are very fanciful and capricious in their appetites, and not always disposed to do well. When dogs are off their feed, a sheep's head boiled and then broken up, and the bones, meat, and broth mixed with their ordinary food will generally fetch the most dainty feeder. Other dogs are very keen on oatmeal porridge, made as for human beings, but of course with no sugar, which I may say should never be given in any form to dogs, as it is an unnatural and injurious food for them, although they are usually quite willing to eat a lump of sugar at almost any time. But they are much better without it. Milk, unskimmed, otherwise it is likely to upset their stomachs, is also a capital thing for dogs in low condition or out of sorts. It is best given cold or lukewarm after being boiled, as in its natural state it is thought liable to cause worms, but of course this is not always the case. I have also found Bovril useful as a pick-me-up or appetizer for animals on the sick list or those who are bad doers. All about dogs, Chapter 1. A few words about dogs in general. In these days of progress, when the tendency of everyone and everything seems to be to go ahead and try to outdo all that has been done by everyone else, in fact, as we so often see it termed, to beat the record, I think I am stating only the actual fact that in the history of the world, dogs were never so highly thought of as they are now, nor were they ever so catered for in a variety of ways, nor so generally popular. And when we consider the many varieties of the species, differing as much as is possible in the members of one family, and the appearance, habits, dispositions, uses, and characteristics just as various, it is not to be wondered at that they enjoy such an amount of public favor, as it must be a strangely constituted human being to whom no breed of dog is acceptable. The numerous packs of stag and foxhounds, harriers, beagles, and other hounds kept throughout the United Kingdom not only are the means of providing an immense amount of sport for our countrymen, but are also, directly and indirectly, the cause of the great improvements which have been effected in the breed of our horses, particularly those suited for hunters and cover hacks, and therefore the cause also of the circulation of a vast amount of money in our own country every year, especially amongst farmers, millers, saddlers, hay and corn dealers, trainers, keepers, kennelmen, grooms, helpers, and a large number of others, more or less connected with hunting and its surroundings. To take another branch of the same subject, just consider what a large body of men are interested and employed in the breeding, rearing, and training of the vast number of high-class greyhounds which are kept in some parts of the country, not only for the competitions in the important national events, but even for private owners who make a hobby of an occasional trial of their dogs. Then again, the great army of keepers, kennelmen, and gillies kept throughout the kingdom to look after and in some cases to breed the deer hounds, pointers, setters, retrievers, and spaniels, which add so much to the pleasure of a true sportsman's daily work amongst game of all kinds, from deer stalking to shooting blackcock, grouse, partridges, pheasants, etc. Although many persons nowadays seem to go on the principle of getting a big total of the day's or week's shoot, and care little for the real pleasure of seeing the dogs work, and due credit or otherwise to care and attention devoted to their training, obtain employment, and I have found them as a rule a highly respectable class of men, often generations of the same family being in the service of one family, and most jealous of the reputation of the master, his dogs, and covers. To take some of our other utility dogs, those of my readers who have visited the cattle market of any large-sized town or city cannot have failed to notice the dogs which attend the professional drovers there, many of them rough-looking enough in all conscience. But as for intelligence, why, they are brimful of it, and willing and able to do wonders with the cattle and sheep in the open or on the road afterwards, understanding the few words said to them, and eager to carry out their orders, and although sometimes erring through excess of zeal, the reverse is seldom the case. And I am pleased to say, as I have known and conversed with many of the men who are acquainted with my love for animals, and know what numbers I have bred and owned, that the greater part of them value their dogs, and appreciate their services, so much so that what might be considered really big offers have frequently been refused by them. One of them said to me, "What good, sir, for me to take a 10-pound note for Bess? I couldn't do nothing without she, and 'twould take me a deuce of a time to make another learn to do like she can with the beasts and that, let alone her being such a pal, and my missus, she do think a deal of Bess, to be sure, sir." I have no doubt that a great many varieties of dog have been pressed into the service of the many, and some highly accomplished troops of performing dogs, which the great increase of music halls throughout the kingdom as well as the continent have brought forward. I have at different times seen Great Danes, Scotch deerhounds, Dalmatians, poodles, and many members of some of the terrier and spaniel families, and hosts of undoubted mongrels taking part in these entertainments, as well as occasionally greyhounds and collies. But these were, I think, exclusively engaged in jumping competitions, when a sort of steeplechase was arranged. These come under the category of utility dogs, as they assist their owners in gaining a living, and the same may be said of the blind men's dogs, which are a great multitude, and enjoy freedom from taxation on the ground of their value to their helpless owners. Another interesting class of utility dogs are those we see at so many of our railway stations and other public places, with a small box hanging under their chins, in which may be placed any donations the charitable are disposed to give to the Railway Servants' Benevolent Association or some other charitable object. And from the way the animals run up to passengers to be noticed, and wait patiently while a coin is found and placed in their boxes, gives one the idea they know what is going on, and that the credit of a good haul at the end of the day will be, in some measure, reflected on the carrier of the collecting box. I have often been surprised to see mentioned in the newspapers the large sums a single dog has been the means of gathering in this way for some good object, and for aught I know, there may have been dogs hard at work during 1898 to 99 for the Prince of Wales's Hospital Fund or other charitable objects. One use to which dogs were formerly put as turnspits and another as beasts of burden, I am pleased to say are no longer allowed by law. I have often, when a child, seen them employed in the latter capacity in the west of England, drawing small, usually two-wheeled carts, with not only the usual market stock and trade utensils, but sometimes the owner, in shape of a burly man or woman seated on the top, and not unfrequently racing along country roads with the owners of similar vehicles, often with 2 or 3 dogs to each, harnessed in tandem fashion, the noise and excitement of the cavalcade being very great and announcing their approach long before their coming in sight. I am very pleased that both these abuses of dogs have been abolished here, although as beasts of burden they are still extensively employed on the continent of Europe, and I am bound to say I have not seen them ill-treated, badly fed, or seeming neglected. Of course, we know that in the Arctic regions, dogs as carriers are actual necessaries, and that locomotion, difficult and dangerous enough there under any circumstances, would be simply impossible without the aid of the Eskimo dogs, of which I have seen a good deal and handled many. They have a dense double coat, are very wolf-like in expression and shape of head, with small pointed ears, oblique sly-looking eyes, rather long arched necks, and tails with characteristic curl and carriage. I do not consider them very sociable, but they would, I dare say, be all right with persons they knew well. I fancy they are a breed that has never been made much of, particularly in their native lands, by their owners, but usually get what is popularly known as more kicks than halfpence, and when off duty have often to go on short commons or do a little caging on their own account, and being thrown on their own resources, we know has a great tendency to sharpen the wits. And it is the same with the Eskimo dogs, who always struck me as very suspicious of attentions from strangers, however well-intentioned they may be. Chapter 2. Dogs used in sport. Staghounds, foxhounds, harriers, beagles. The staghound. This is not a hound that will require a long dissertation from me. There are but few packs in England which hunt the deer at all, and still less that hunt the wild deer. These are commonly supposed to be the same as were formerly called southern hounds, and as the large tracts of land, formerly waste and forest, have been gradually brought under cultivation, the places most available for stag hunting have disappeared. They were celebrated for tongue, and made plenty of music as they followed the windings of the deer. But they were not even moderately fast hounds, and it is a fact that no very fleet hounds can be musical. Devon, which has always been a great country for sport, has for many years kept up a pack of staghounds, besides others, as we find Nimrod states, although the going in that country is about the worst in the world. More hounds are kept in Devon than in any 3 counties in England. In 1849, Devon possessed 8 established packs of foxhounds, 3 of other hounds, the staghounds, and many a parish pack kept by subscription. The general run of staghounds appear, both in shape, style, and color, like large foxhounds, and are commonly supposed to be formed from drafts from the foxhounds, too large for those packs. The modern staghound is about 24 inches high or more. They are seldom so level in color, shape, or kennel likeness as you see in first-class packs of foxhounds and harriers. The royal buckhounds are an exception. They are kept in sound condition and the best matching pack in the kingdom, of the prevailing hound colors, including every marking except the blue mottle, thought to be indicative of the Harrier cross. The various colors need not be set out here, nor is it necessary, in a breed so seldom shown, to give the points of excellence more fully than to say that great muscular strength, plenty of bone, courage, excellent scenting powers, and speed are indispensable, as the quarry hunted is usually in as fine condition as a racehorse, and nearly as fast, often has been out before on a similar occasion, knows the country well, and means giving his pursuers what is vulgarly termed a run for their money. Still, it must be admitted, unlike the packs of all nations in the Middle Ages, the staghounds of our times are well disciplined and steady, and the stag is more fairly hunted than he was even in the reign of Queen Elizabeth, so often described, although I am bound to say I am not included amongst her admirers, as good Queen Bess. The foxhound. I do not propose to go very deeply into the history of this well-known and highly popular breed, or enter into its supposed origin, about which there is so much difference of opinion. When one remembers the great number of packs of foxhounds in the United Kingdom, supported either by private enterprise, like that of the late lamented Duke of Beaufort, K.G., who for such a number of years bore the burden of providing sport over a large area in the west of England 4 and 5 days a week throughout the hunting seasons, in later years so ably seconded in his efforts by his son the present Duke, or by subscription, we cannot fail to recognize the fact that this breed of dog has done much to keep sportsmen in touch with each other in our land, been the means of circulating a vast amount of money in a great many directions, and had a very important influence on the breeding of hunters and cover hacks, for which the United Kingdom holds such a high reputation. Beckford, who has been considered one of the highest authorities on hunting, says, "Without taking upon me to describe what requisites may be necessary to form a good prime minister, I will describe some of those which are essentially necessary towards making a perfect huntsman, qualities which, I will venture to say, would not disgrace more brilliant situations, such as clear head, nice observation, quick apprehension, undaunted courage, strength of constitution, activity of body, a good ear, and a melodious voice." In speaking of the foxhound, he goes on to say, if he is not of perfect symmetry, he will neither run fast or bear much work, and describes him as follows: "Let his legs be straight as arrows, his feet round and not too large, his chest deep and back broad, his head small, his neck thin, his tail thick and brushy. If he carries it well, so much the better. Such young hounds as are out at the elbow, or weak from the knee to the foot, should never be taken into the pack. I find that I have mentioned a small head as one of the necessary points about a hound. You will please to understand it as relative to beauty only, for as to goodness, I believe large-headed hounds are in no way inferior. As to color, there is much diversity of taste. Very often the head and ears are of a brilliant red or fallow, with a white mouth and lips, and a streak of white, technically known as a blaze, down the head, a white collar or chest, more or less black markings in blotches, or a saddle on the body, and part of tail, white legs, and belly. The rich color on head has a pleasing effect, and if the cheeks are tan marked, and there is a white blaze before mentioned, it gives a light character to the head, or if orange is mixed with and under the black markings, such would form almost a perfect combination of true hound coloring. I may fitly conclude my few remarks on this interesting breed with the following description of the desired points. The head should be light, airy, sensible, and at the same time full of dignity. It should have a certain amount of chops, and the forehead slightly wrinkled. The neck should be long and clean. The least looseness or throatiness is fatal to appearance. Where it joins the head, it should be fine, gradually widening to the shoulders. A long neck is most important in the breed, as helping the scent, whereas a short neck would not only impede action, but pace also. The ears should be close to the sides of the head and be set on low. The shoulders long and sloping gracefully. Chest deep and not too narrow. The elbows well let down in a line with the body. The forelegs well clothed with muscle, straight as darts. Strong in bone from elbows to feet. The ankles or pasterns must neither turn in or out nor stand back, and should be strong and large. The least tendency in the feet turning out is most destructive to endurance and pace. If any deviation from the straight line, they should rather turn in. In shape, they should be round, not flat or fleshy. The divisions between the toes should be apparent. The soles firm, hard, and very enduring. The back must be straight, wide, and muscular. The loins strong, square, and wide, with deep, not flat back ribs. The hindquarters very strong and muscular, with wide appearance from behind, long as well as large. Straight hocks, rather out than in, with strong short bone from hock to heel. The stern should be gaily carried, should end in a fine point, little feathered but not actually smooth, strong at root, gradually tapering to tips. Black, white, and hound tan is perhaps the best color. When the black is very prominent and the tanned markings slight, the hounds are said to be black and white. When the colors are mixed, they are said to be pied. Hare, badger, red, tan, and yellow pies are the best, in that order of merit. The coat should be dense, although smooth and glossy. The well-shaped foxhound seems, owing to his well-proportioned frame, much smaller than he really is. When thoroughly and closely examined, his beauty and fitness for the work he has to perform, and the immense amount of speed, strength, courage, and endurance he so often requires, will be fully appreciated by the observant spectator, even if he cannot be strictly classed amongst sportsmen. The Harrier. While I am writing these lines, I have not the statistics before me, but I am certainly under the impression there are not so many packs of harriers in the country as there formerly were. The name of Errors or Harriers is known to have been given to hounds used for hare hunting in the time of King Henry V, but they were also occasionally used for hunting deer. Before this, the same hound was known as the Bracchettis or Bercelettis, the diminutive form of the word braque. The breed, in a more or less coarse form, has undoubtedly existed for ages, and it is thought by many that it is more likely foxhounds were derived from it than that it was the other way around. The same colors are found amongst harriers as with his larger and more numerous comrades, but usually, for some reason not disclosed, more of the pied, particularly the hare-pied, yellow and white, shaded with black or gray on the back or saddle, and the sort of dapple or freckle, generally termed blue mottle, is thought to be peculiar to harrier blood, and that when it makes its appearance amongst any other of the hounds, it shows a cross of harrier blood somewhere in the strain. This color is often accompanied with hound tan markings on the head and black patches on body, although the latter do not conduce to the beauty of the specimen. Some of the packs of Welsh Harriers, which for scenting and working qualities are very hard to beat, are so versatile that it is said they will hunt anything with a hairy skin unless they are broken from it when young. And I have heard of a pack in the Principality which regularly hunts hares until fox hunting begins, when the green coats are exchanged for pink, and they take up the pursuit of Reynard as to the manner born. The height of the harrier is a matter of taste. Stonehenge puts it at under 20 inches. Probably the average is about 18 inches. A well-known sportsman in Dorsetshire in 1871 speaks of the pack belonging to the late Mr. T.B. Evans of Chettle near Blandford, which he considered the best he had ever seen, and consisted of bitches 15½ inches, combining the blood of the packs of Messrs. Wickstead, Hurrell, Bowley, and Sir Vincent Corbet. He goes on to say, the education of this pack is marvelous. Rabbits are frequently left to feed in the kennel, and occasionally, I am told, coupled to any reprobates of the pack to shame them from molesting them. I have hunted with these hounds, and have had the very great pleasure of seeing them handled by that supreme master of his art. I have seen these hounds pass by rabbits as pointers would go through a poultry yard. I have watched them as they spread like a fan when they were picking out a cold scent, the worthy master sitting quietly on his cob. And when they recovered it, seen them stream away with voices like a peal of bells and as close together as a flock of pigeons. I have observed how they followed all the hare's doublings, and with the true harrier instinct, cast back when in perplexity, never babbling, skirting, or puzzling over other stains, but carrying on the line until they pulled down their game, sometimes even after a 45 minutes burst. Many sportsmen complain in the present day that harriers are becoming too fast to do their work properly, and that this has arisen from crosses with foxhounds, the original variety being thought to date back to the old southern hound, more remarkable for their great powers of scent and hunting quality than for pace. Beagles. There is another breed which is yearly gaining in popularity, and is really a miniature hound, of which there are two varieties, rough and smooth, differing only in texture of coat. And these are subdivided again into different heights, ranging from under 16 and over 12 inches to under 12 and over 10 inches, which latter are often called pocket beagles. The skull should be fairly long and wide, slightly domed, with well-defined stop, short and tapering muzzle, open nostrils and largish nose, thin long ears hanging folded, soft large eyes, no dewlap but muscular neck, rather long, deep chest for size, muscular thighs, well-boned and straight forelegs, round cat-like feet, stern carried gaily, regular colors of foxhounds whom they resemble in many ways, coat flat, dense, and close. These are quite picturesque little creatures, and I have known them kept as pets and companions. But of course, they are supposed to be used for their work as sporting dogs only, great numbers of them being kept in different parts of the country and hunted as packs, most of their followers being on foot, and often accompanied by some of the sportswomen of their districts, as their pace is not so impetuous as that of their larger brethren. Frequently, they call forth a considerable following in the parts they travel over, and many cricketers and others, Dr. W.G. amongst others, who desire to keep in condition during the off-season, habitually attend the nearest meets of beagles as an agreeable form of training. And with that, we've reached the end of Chapter 2, which seems as good a place as any to end this evening's reading from All About Dogs, a book for doggy people, which has to be one of the more hysterical titles I've ever read on this podcast. That was quite interesting, and if you're at all interested in the history of dog breeding, I definitely recommend this book to you, because the illustrations of these breeds are rather different than the forms they take now. If you'd like to see those pictures and read this work for yourself, as always, you'll find a link to a free ebook from Project Gutenberg in the show description. If you'd like to connect, suggest a boring book you'd like to hear read, or request more from one we've already started, you can drop me an email via our website, www.boringbookspod.com. It's always a pleasure to hear from you. Thank you so much for joining me for this evening's reading. Until our next boring book, good night.